Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time of year. The A-League men is only days. In fact, it's only 1 day away from kicking off. It feels like we've been waiting an eternity for this. It's been like, what, 5, 6 months? That's basically an eternity, right? Anyway, it's that time of year, which I love to do, is my ladder prediction. I'm going to predict where all 12 teams are going to finish on the ladder, but it's just going to be me doing it. Unfortunately, Samuel isn't able to join us for this video, but he will be with us very soon in an upcoming video. Fingers crossed. But basically what I'm going to do, I'm going to start this video by ranking the teams from 12th to 1st and just, give you a little bit of why I think they're going to finish where I'm predicting them to finish. I'm also just going to go over a few ins and outs. I'm not going to go through all the ins and outs because for some teams, especially like the Wanderers, we're going to be going through quite a lot. So we'll just talk about the most significant one. 12th spot, I have the Brisbane Roar. An unfortunate position. I've had to put them in there. It's been a bit of a demise from the Queensland club over the past decade. But unfortunately, I don't really see them finishing much higher. They have recruited, I think, some pretty handy players, but we're only talking about really two significant players, and that's, of course, Charlie Austin, the former Premier League striker. He's played for the likes of Queen's Park Rangers, West Bromwich Albion, I think, and Burnley. So he's definitely got a lot of pedigree with him. Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to be enough to get Brisbane off the bottom of the ladder. I do expect Charlie Austin to hit home at least 10 plus goals this season, but I think it's going to be a pretty difficult season for Warren Moon's men. Overall, they've let a few players go, some pretty decent players, at least from their standards. Nick Olsen, Alex Parson, Juan Lascano, Corey Brown, Luke Jovanovic. Overall, like those two guys I've mentioned, Riku Denzaki, who was actually at the Raw a couple of years ago, the Japanese fella on loan from his parent club, and Charlie Austin, I don't think those two significant players are enough to make a difference. For me, it's pretty difficult. Not difficult, it's pretty disappointing to see where Brisbane are at the moment compared to where they were a decade ago. They were the best club in the competition, and really in the past, more than a couple of years, quite some time now, the new owners in the Backeries have just slowly seen this club fall down the ladder. They are playing 3 games at Lang Park this season, so hopefully that might be able to bring back a bit of the old day vibe, but a lot of work for the Brisbane Roar. Maybe with my 11th place team, I'm probably underestimating them once again, but for me, it's the Wellington Phoenix. The past 2 years have been really difficult on the Knicks with having to play almost all of their home games away from home in Australia. I think they only got, 1 or 2 in the previous season, then last season just gone, I think they got 1 or 2 games in as well. For me, for the Knicks, I feel like the past 2 seasons, they've really been punching above their weight, and maybe I'm not giving enough credit to them and the fantastic work their manager Ufo Tale has been able to do. But for me, I think this is probably where they're going to finish 11th. They've let quite a lot of handy players go. Obviously, Gary Hooper, Louis Fenton, Matthew Bozanowski, Gal Seldova, Reno Piscopo, really talented player there. They've brought in Steven Ugarkovic from the Wanderers. I don't know how much he'll bring. They have brought in some international players: Bulgarian Bozidar, Krajev, Brazilian Jan Sassi, and a Polish player, Oskar Zawada. For me, though, they haven't really strengthened in the defensive side of things. Yes, Steven Ugarkovic, a little bit of a center defensive midfielder or someone that can play in the centre back, but I don't think he's going to make much difference in terms of the back line. So I think that's the problem. That's the area they haven't really addressed, and I think they conceded the most goals last season. So yeah, for me, the Knicks, I'm putting them in 11th. In 10th, we're probably, at least from my predictions, we're going to see a bit of an improvement from the Perth Glory, although the only way was up for them after a very disappointing season last year. They finished last season in 12th. I reckon they're going to finish 10th. Of course, their home ground issue is another issue again, which we thought was well past us, but there's been works being done to HBF Park, which means they're only going to be able to play 3 games there this season. 10 of their 13 games are going to be in Macedonia Park. I don't think that'll hurt them too much, but maybe a slight improvement under their new coach, Ruben Zatkovic. Yeah, for me, they've recruited quite well. I thought Perth Glory, Stephen Kolakowski, Mustafa Amini. He's a really interesting one. He didn't really impress with Sydney FC, but we know he's got plenty of talent. Brought in Ryan Williamson, a very interesting under-19s player, Israeli Ben Uzabel. So keen to see how he'll go. He scored 16 times with his Israeli club last season. They have lost quite a few as well. Andy Keogh, Sama Malik, Josh Rawlins, Nick Fitzgerald, Brandon O'Neill, Daniel Steins, Callum Tillums. Of course, Daniel Sturridge. I'm sure the Perth Glory will be glad to see the back of him. Yeah, quite a few loss. Some decent pickups, but still I think they're going to struggle. I think 10th for me. Newcastle Jets, I've got them finishing in 9th. They lost in the off-season, basically, arguably one of the best players in the competition last year in Daniel Pena, the Brazilian that was on loan. He's gone back. There were rumours in the off-season he might sign for Sydney FC, but obviously that never eventuated. Yeah, he was their big player last year. Beckel Mitzel-Tadze was also a good player for them, and he's back again, the Georgian. But there's another Becker at Newcastle, and it's Becker Dartsmilia. So be interesting to see how he goes. It was Mikkel Tadze, the one-off star Georgian for them, or will this guy be able to do quite well? They've picked up Carl Jenkinson, who was playing for Melbourne City, but he was once upon a time over there playing in the top flight of England. Brennan O'Neill, Reno Piscopo, Trent Bahagia, some decent pickups, but I really think the loss of Daniel Pena might be a big hurt to them. They were pushing for finals last season, but I think they'll slip down the ladder. He's a big loss. Central Coast Mariners, for me, in 8th. They've really performed well in the past 2 years. I think 3rd a couple of years ago. Now they finished 5th, I think, last season. So they've enjoyed some really good years after a long period of struggle. I think 8th is probably where I think I'm seeing them finishing. Obviously, Garrett Quoll's been one of the big talking points in the off-season, signing from Premier League club Newcastle United. Thankfully for the Mariners, they'll still have him till January, so they'll be able to get maybe 10 games out of him. So it'll be good to see Garrett Quoll perform for the Mariners, but he'll be a big loss for them heading into the new year. I know he's only 17, but he brought so much spark off the bench last season for the Mariners, and we saw him perform quite well for the Socceroos, playing a crucial role for that second goal against New Zealand. Jason Cummings, I think he's going to have another cracking season for the Mariners. Expect him to score most of the goals for the club. I reckon another 10-plus season from Jason Cummings. They've lost quite a few players as well. Mark Biragitti, arguably one of the best goalkeepers in the A-League for the past couple of seasons. He's gone to Scotland. He's not having the best of times, so maybe he will be back in the A-League soon enough. But I think they've recruited quite smartly. They've picked up Danny Vukovic, who is a former A-League champion, so he's going to be pretty handy, I reckon. But they've lost Lewis Miller, Oliver Bazanik, Ruben Tongik, Kai Rolls, and of course one of their fan favourites, Marcio Reno. So they've lost quite a few. And Matt Simon too, he's retired as well. We didn't see much of Matt Simon last year, but he's been in the A-League for a long time. Local boy up there at the Mariners, so that'll hurt a bit for the local faithful Mariners fans up there. But I think they're going to miss out on the finals. I love the Mariners. I really love the work they do in bringing through a lot of young talents. But I think they're going to miss the finals this year. Speaking of teams that will be missing the finals, that we've become quite used to seeing in the finals, Sydney FC. Yeah, maybe it's my bias showing a bit, but that's fine. That's fine. I think they're probably. I think they're definitely capable of making the top 6. I think it's going to be pretty tight for 5th, 6th, 7th. I think they're probably going to miss out again. That would be 2 years in a row. For me, this is a big season for Steve Corica. This is his make or break because, you know, you could argue that he kind of inherited Graham Arnold's squad and he's been living in the legacy of that. But I think this is where we're going to see whether he'll shine or not as a manager. He had a difficult season last year. We'll see how he will adapt in 22-23. They've brought in some decent players. A Spaniard by the name of Diego Caballo, Slovakian international Robert Muck, and English talents Joe Lolly and the ex-Wanderer Jack Rodwell. So there's some pretty handy players there. For me, I don't think they've addressed the issue of where the goals are going to come from. Adam Lafondra, of course, has been a consistent threat up front for the Sky Blues, but he's 35. He's getting on a bit. I think they probably needed another option up front. There was also questions about Andrew Redmayne's form. Funny enough to say, heading towards the end of last season. We've kind of forgotten about it, considering how well he went at the World Cup. So we'll see if that's gone away or not. So, but it'll be interesting to see how Redmayne goes. There's also some quite aging players. Look at the likes of Alec Wilkinson and Ryan Grant. But these are seasoned A-League veterans. They've won titles with Sydney FC, so don't rule them out, even though I'm doing the exact thing. But yeah, I think it's going to be another difficult season for the Sky Blues. And hey, finishing 7th as a Wanderers fan, who love to finish 7th. But for them, I think they would see it as a big failure. So big season coming up for Sydney FC. I think they've got the talent to make the top 6 and potentially crack the top 4. But for me, I see them missing out. Of course, a big season moving back into their home at Sydney Football Stadium. So that's good to see. Moving into the top 6. In 6, I've got Adelaide United. Listen, this is a team that can finish maybe higher than 6 on the ladder. It's a great club, Adelaide United. Great stadium, great club, of course, great bunch of fans, and a great bunch of players. I think they can impress. I think they can go a long way, or they could miss out. It's an interesting thing with Adelaide United. They're just a great team, and I'd like to see them play some good football once again this year. I think they finished a game short of the grand final, losing out against Melbourne City last season. They've definitely got a squad capable of challenging for the top 4, in fact. So, yeah, Adelaide United, 6 for me. 5th, I think this is probably the hardest one in the whole competition to predict, because I don't think I've seen too much of them in the off-season, at least against A-League opposition. It's Macarthur Fc, the recently crowned Australia Cup winners. I'll tell you why I think they're a hard team to pick, is because they looked really impressive during the Australia Cup, but I think one of their games was against NPL opposition. They played Wellington Phoenix, got a 2-0 win, but they were playing the likes of obviously Sydney United in the final, Oakley Cannons in the semi-final, Mackay with Sundays, that really long name, Magpies Crusaders, they played them as well. So hard to gauge, but going off those games, I've been really impressed with what Dwight Yorke has brought to the table at the Bulls out at Southwest Sydney. Daniel Arzani looks like a brand new man. So I think he's probably forgotten about those 2 difficult years, or more than 2, the difficult years he's had ever since he left the Australian shores after the World Cup 4 years ago. So he's looking really good, and I'm expecting, I think I said in my preview for the Australia Cup final, I'm expecting a really big season from Daniel Arzani, at least for the first 6 weeks, because I think he's in good form, and I think he will be out to try and impress Graham Arnold and said, hey, I'm still available. I want to go to the World Cup. I think he's going to have a big shift in the first 6 weeks of the comp. They've got plenty of talent across the park. Ulysses Davia, Philip Curto in goals, Craig Newton, Lockie Rose, Al Hassan Toure, Tomislav Uskok. It's a solid squad. They could finish 5th. They could even finish higher. But it's just depending on how Dwight Yorke gets his team to gel and how his brand of football stacks up against the other teams. So it's a real hard one to pick. But I see the Bulls making a return to the finals. Now 4th, I've picked Western United, the reigning A-League champions. I don't think this is too far off the mark. They did finish last season in 3rd, so a drop off by 1 position I don't think is too bad. They haven't recruited too much in the off-season. That could be a good thing. That could be a bad thing. They've got a pretty good squad with what they've got, and they've got a definite pedigree across the park to push for another tilt at grand final glory. Some of the ones they've brought in, and it's actually not that many. James Teresi, the former Wanderers man, he might just be a kind of player you want to bring in to add depth. I don't see him starting too often at Western United. James Teresi, when he was playing the Wanderers last season, I thought he had moments of class, but I just think he wasn't well suited to the Wanderers. He might perform well down in the western suburbs of Melbourne with John Aloisi's team, but we'll wait and see. Double Jacob Tratt is also off to Western United, coming over from the Glory, and a Mali international, Tongo Dumbiai, has arrived from a Kazakh club. So don't know much about him, but you look at that squad, they've got plenty of talent. Leo Lacroix, he was probably one of my picks for player of the season last year. He's just a man mountain in the back. You're not getting past him. The fine wine, Jamie Young in goals, getting better and better every year. Lockie Wales, Ben Garuccio, Josh Riston, Alessandro Diamante, if he can get on the pitch. There's plenty of talent at that club. they can definitely challenge again. For me, it's 4th. Now, my third place pick on the ladder, if I had a psychologist, he'd probably be telling me to don't put this here because you've been constantly disappointed when you've hyped up your own club. The Western Sydney Wanderers. Now, hear me out. I know what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, Brad, they've disappointed you over the past 7 years. You've had a rebuild. You've always come into season with a good squad and good hope. They're going to miss out on the finals again. And you know what? You're probably right. No. Listen. This is why I think the Wanderers are going to finish 3rd. Mark Rudan has the squad he wants. Now, we said that last season with Carl Robertson. He had the squad he wants. But I felt last year with Carl Robertson, he was recruiting for the sake of recruiting. I think Mark Rudan has strengthened our squad right across the pitch. We've brought in Romain Almafantano, Yengi Nembagat. Yenny. Let's just call him Yenny. I'm not going to sit here and try and pronounce it. Suleiman Kripik and Marcelo. They're all decent signings. Marcelo's been named the captain for this year. Of course, Milos Ninkovic, the big talking point of the off-season. How much will he feature with the Wanderers this year coming over from the Sky Blues? I don't think he'll feature too much. Lawrence Thomas, a really smart pickup in goals. Brandon Barello, Kasuki Yengi, they'll definitely add threats up front. Now, it's a complete overhaul. We've lost the likes of Kieran Backus. He's gone to St Mirren. He's doing really well over there in Scotland. We've lost Bernie Abini. Thank the Lord above. Toma Mohamed's gone. Kajira Ogawa, who couldn't hit a barn door, he's gone as well. And James Storezi, like I said, he's gone to Western United. It's another big clean out and another big crop coming through. But there genuinely feels like a good vibe at this club. Now, I think I had Wanderers finishing 4th last year. Or 5th, I can't really remember. Maybe 3rd, who knows? I might have over-exaggerated. But there genuinely feels like a good vibe. I think I was trying to kid myself that there was a good mood at Carl Robertson, but there was always that thought in the back of my mind, I don't think Carl's the right man for the job. I think Mark Rudan, he gets it. He understands the importance of the community aspect of the Western Sydney Wanderers, getting involved with that Western Sydney community. And I've been really impressed with how he's gone about it. There was the fan day a couple of weeks ago celebrating the 10-year anniversary of the RBB. The captain was unveiled there. You might have seen Ninkovic egging on the crowd with the telling East Sydney where to go chant. It's there's a good feel about the club again. And it's been a long, long time since I've actually felt, positive. Like, not just on the field, but off the field as well. They say, if you've got a good enough squad, you win the title. But it's so important to have the right mentality at a club and within your players. Because if you haven't got that, forget about it. So for me, top 6 is a must. They have to make top 6. I'm going probably stretching it a little bit. I reckon they're going to finish 3rd. That might be stretching it a bit with my Wanderers bias. That's okay. This is my ladder prediction. You can let me know in the comments why I'm wrong. But I'm feeling confident. I reckon the crowds will be back at Parramatta. And I reckon 3rd place. Come the finals, who knows what's going to happen. But let's move on. I've spent enough time on the Wanderers. Melbourne City, 2nd. I've heard a lot of conversation about City. They're just not as good as they once were. We still look at that squad. It's still a banging squad. They have arguably the best front 3 in the competition. And McLaren, Leckie and Naboot. That's still there. They were firing quite well last season. The finals, they looked a bit slow in the finals, the grand final. They never really showed up for that. But, if you're going to ask me where they're going to finish in the regular season, I still think they've got enough talent to finish 2nd. And if you worked it out already, I reckon Melbourne Victory is going to finish 1st this season. Nani's been by far the most high-profile signing in the off-season, the former Man United fan favourite. He's at the club. I think he's going to definitely add a good vibe. Will he make the difference between this team not finishing 1st or finishing 1st? No, I reckon they probably would have finished 1st regardless of whether they had Nani or not. Remember, this team went on like a massive streak, undefeated streak last season, and only got ended in the semi-finals. And, they say, you've got to be good enough to win those semi-finals, but semi-finals are a whole different ballgame. The finals are so different to the regular season. I think they're going to have a really good regular season. And picked up a few: Paul Izzo, Matthew Bozanowski, Tommy Urick. Don't know how often Tommy Urick will start, but he'll definitely get regular runs off the bench. He's played under Tony Popovich before at the Wanderers, so I think he'll have a good impact. Jason Davidson and Marco Rojas, those are two big losses for Melbourne Victory. Marco Rojas, obviously going over to Chile. I think his parents might be Chilean, or one of his parents. But those two will be a bit of a loss for them. But for me, Tony Popovich, he's been a proven coach at 3 different clubs. He's gone to Perth when they weren't going too that well. Got them first, got them into the grand final. He was the inaugural coach for the Wanderers. Got to 3 grand finals in 4 years. He won the Australia Cup with Melbourne Victory last year. He can perform, but he hasn't got the grand final. He still hasn't won it. He's a really good manager when it comes to a regular season, but he needs to get the grand final. That's the real one thing he's missing out on. He's got even the Asian Champions League. He still hasn't got a grand final. Yeah, I think for me, Melbourne Victory first. But in terms of the competitiveness throughout the competition, I think first, 4th, 5th, 6th, they'll be competing right for it. I don't see anyone breaking away and running away with the competition. But in terms of the other end of the competition, I don't think, Brisbane are going to be struggling. They're going to be a million points behind second last. I think, Brisbane and Wellington and Perth and Newcastle, the likes of them, they'll be battling it out towards the bottom of the competition. So I don't think any position is set in stone. I think it's going to be really competitive throughout the whole season, like it has for the past 2 seasons. So I think that's a wrap on where I think everyone's going to finish this season. Hopefully I haven't waffled too much, but if you've been with us this far, maybe drop us a like for this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and let us know in the comments where you think everyone else is going to finish in the ladder. But yeah, tomorrow's the day. A-League is back. I'm looking forward to it, and I'll see you in the next video.